So you mentioned something interesting here, Julian, and you said this first impression. So I don't want to get into perhaps the science behind of body language and all these different things, because that could be a conversation in its own right. But is there anything we should be doing, again, as a sales leader who has, rightly or wrongly, has seemingly that authority in a relationship with an individual who's below us within the corporate hierarchy? Is there anything that we should or shouldn't be doing to leave a good impression on them, rather than assuming that they're going to listen to us because we have that perceived authority?
Yes, absolutely. One thing that stands head and shoulders above everything else, and that is listen. Listen to them. The basis of all of my work is that it's not a straight line, I speak, you listen. It doesn't work like that. Actually, it's a circle. Speaking and listening are involved in a dynamic, circular relationship all the time. Because the way I listen to you will affect the way you listen to me. The way I speak will affect the way you listen. The way you speak will affect the way I listen. There's all these relationships going on dynamically all the time. It's a kind of organic process. And it's really important to factor in listening, to understand the importance of listening in relationship. I mean, what's the most common complaint in relationships? He or she never listens to me. Mm-hmm. And it's no different at work. It really isn't. If you have a domineering, I'll tell you a story. I sold my business back in 2003 to an advertising agency, which shall remain nameless. And the London wing of that advertising agency, their London office, which is a very major agency in London, was run by a guy who at the time had a reputation for being terrifying. He didn't listen to people. He shouted at them. He was very domineering. High energy, go-getter, all that kind of stuff, yes, but people were terrified of him. And the result of that was that nobody felt courage enough to go to him with bad news. They could only ever go to him with good news. And as that culturally filtered down in the organization, people started hiding the fact they'd lost a piece of business, claiming that they'd won bits of business they hadn't actually won. And the result of that, years down the line, was that the agency had to go back and restate its accounts, and they were dramatically different. And the share price of the parent company fell by about 70% as a result of that embarrassment. Mm-hmm. And, the opprobrium is another good word for you, that was heaped upon them for basically deceiving the world with false accounting. And that was all because this guy would not listen to people. He just shouted at them. So being in an organization which is based around a listening culture is a very powerful thing. There was a survey a few years back called the Organizational Listening Survey. And what it found was pretty depressing. It found that the vast majority of organizations listen poorly or not at all. I mean, when you say corporate communication, it's all outbound, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, anybody on this particular podcast, you're all salespeople, you know that the most important part of a sales conversation is not the speaking, it's the listening. I mean, how on earth can you sell to somebody if you don't know what they need, what they want, what turns them on, what are their particular motivations, what are their triggers, what are their objections? You need to know those things, and you do that by listening to them and asking them questions. And a listening organization is an organization, this survey found, that has greater staff loyalty, greater customer loyalty, higher staff retention, better results overall. The organizations which were poor at listening, and that was most of them, had a lot more crisis and a lot more serious incidents like that, much worse reputations. So listening at a corporate level is very poor and very important. And if you're running a team, you can at least be responsible for your little enclave of the organization. You can be a listening leader. And people, in my experience, will follow listening leaders to the ends of the earth because they feel understood, they feel part of, they feel worthwhile, they feel valued. I mean, it's said that we want three things in any relationship: to be heard, to be understood, and to be valued. And that all comes from listening to people.
I'm sure the conversation of how to, whether we call it active listening or however we frame it up, it's a conversation for another time, because I'm sure that'll fill a 3-hour podcast in its own right. But is there anything we can do? And I don't want to just pay this lip service, but is there anything we can do from a structural standpoint of weekly check-ins or daily messages to see how people are? Is there anything that we can do to build a framework to enable us to be in a situation where we can actively listen more often? Because I know there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this conversation now, Julian, who say, I would love to have this conversation with my team. I'd love to have this conversation with my sales manager. I would love to connect with them, and I want to hear them. I want to understand them better, but we just don't have time. It's physically, it just doesn't happen. The best wishes of the team is to get together on this, and this, and we never manage to get it done. Is there anything, I guess, corporately, structurally, that we should be putting into place to force some of this or to force us to have the opportunity to implement some of this?
Yes, I would say it doesn't take very long, really. I can't think of many things that are more important, but certainly if you've got a team of 10 people, then it wouldn't take you very long to have a 10-minute session with each of them once a week.
Yeah.
That's 100 minutes. So an hour and 40 minutes. And if you do them pretty much back to back, it's a couple of hours. You've checked in then with the whole team once a week. Now, many great managers have done things because they're managing such complex organizations. They've done things like say, I want the entire report on one piece of paper, please. If you say, I'm going to have a 10-minute or even a 5-minute call with you once a week to go through your issues, your intentions, your experiences, your forecasts, whatever it might be, it really doesn't take very long. And then you have a full team of people who are completely committed. Mm-hmm. I can't think of many things that are more important if you're running a sales team than getting them fully motivated and understanding what's going on in each of their worlds. I mean, surely if you're not doing that at all, what are you doing? What is all that time being spent on? Is it reporting? In which case, maybe you have a conversation with the people you're reporting to saying, this is too onerous. I mean, I can't, creating all these spreadsheets is taking my whole week. And that's not actually productive. Doesn't make any money.